following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Sorry about
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zig Zag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco, across the moat from Oakland, and I am blessed, as my audience knows. I speak to the most interesting folks in the planet, and today is no exception. Patrick Duffey, who has been a San Franciscoite since 1971, is on to tell us about the changes in Northern California since the 70s, when I just got out of the service and decided to stay in California, not move back to New York. Tell us how great it was in 1971 when you got to San Francisco, Patrick.
Well, I'm glad you got out of the service. I'm very pleased and proud to be with you today, my friend. I lived in Southern California growing up in the country and had decided the mentality wasn't good enough for me. I'd hitchhiked up Highway 1 out of Riverside all the way to San Francisco. About 3.5 days, no sleep, crosstops, $20. It got me up here. And yeah. And
what is basically, for those of us, those of you in the audience would like to know, if you don't live in California, what's the difference between Southern California and Northern California? And why did you decide to stay raised in Southern California, come to Northern California? Why did you decide to stay up here?
Being in love with music way back when. I grew up in the desert, Riverside area, Lake Elsinore area, very country-like with rattlesnakes, eagles, and coyotes. And I'm listening to the Beatles and Black Sabbath, and I'm listening to Led Zeppelin, and I'm trying to practice my drums. And, of course, there's no one down there that in my area, 27 miles from any town. And I grew tired and weary of the shallowness of a small town. And I just packed it all up with a backpack and headed on up to San Francisco, where my mother had just been living a few years prior. And she lived up on the high mountain in San Francisco, and that would have been Twin Peaks, and the Haight-Ashbury was underneath me, and not too far from that, across the street would have been the Panhandle and Golden Gate Park, where a lot of wonderful people, there was a lot of music up here, obviously, back in that day. A lot of free concerts in the park, anywhere, on the spot. People were brother and sister back then, and not so polarized and distant as they are now. Of course, things have changed.
Yes, they have.
Yeah, and
let's talk about those changes. What precipitated? If you ask me, it was Reagan. But I'll ask you, what precipitated a lot of these changes that we talk about? How did we become so polarized? And how has the city of San Francisco changed? And it has dramatically.
Boy, if you're going to get me into politics, I'm going to be here for several days. I am so vocal on the way things are right now with this besieged government that we put our hands in. that you and I hadn't ever trusted through Nixon, through Reagan, through Bush, through any of them. Your mentality and mine, you being out of the service, we question, and we don't always take the answers. We look for them. We were more united back then, joining hands and being more identifiable with each other's problems. Right now, it's very colorful, and we're looking at civil war because of a president and or political views. San Francisco was beautiful way back when, and very loving. Things have changed down there. The me generation, the I generation, and a lot of the corporations came in, took over. A lot of people went toward their personal greed and their tunnel vision of getting what they could. Thus why a lot of the reasons we're acting this way now, I feel.
How has the music scene changed?
Well, when I had happened upon the Jefferson Starship in the Panhandle, there was a flatbed truck, and I just didn't know who they were. I offered to help unload, and they let me, and I hung around, found out who they were, and proceeded to go back to Willard North in Fulton, where their house was. I don't know. People were just, they were fucking groovy back then, pardon my language. The music has changed. I had been in it for about 28 years, and I had never worked for anyone. I was independent with bands and word of mouth only, and I was very fortunate in that. I've been blessed with Pablo Cruz, the Tubes, the Starship, the Airplane, Martha Davis from the Motels, and my last gig was Pink Floyd, Division Bell, in '94. It used to be for the love of music, and the reason I did it was because I respected who the person was in the music, not their egos and their attitudes. So once again, I was extremely fortunate. Right now, everyone.
What was Gracie Slick like?
The den mother to me of everyone. Beautiful, funny, and still is.
Right.
Everyone personal. Pete, David Freiburg, who I'm still in touch with Linda. Imperial, Pete and Marty, are gone, and one of the things about Marty Ballin is, this would have had to have been 83 or 4 maybe, but helped one of my ex-band members at the Hearts tour. And I think because of Honey Green, our mutual friend who was the secretary for Bill Graham.
You got to meet Bill Graham, and you got to work with him a little bit. What was
Actually, I didn't work for Bill Graham. I was there with Marty Ballin, Richard Basil, Huey Lewis, the whole crew and everything like that. I'd asked Robin, who was a good friend, and still is, to say hi to my fiance, a beautiful Filipina in the front row.
Nice.
And he jumped off stage, went on up to Grace, and he sat in her lap and kissed her for about 4 minutes. That is Robin Williams. I love him. Bill Graham walked up to me and introduced himself to me And he goes, I know who you are, and everyone knows you. No, everyone knows you, and you know everyone, but I don't know who you are. And I said, hey, Bill, name's Patrick, and I walked away. I love Bill. Great guy. Did a lot of things coming out from New York, out of the Holocaust. And I believe he tried his hand at acting, but I'm really happy he went into the music industry with mine at Fillmore, getting the first gig.
Did you get to work with the committee at all back in those days?
I did not.
Or know them, or know of them, or
well, knew of them.
They were such an intricate part of the city.
Of course.
Of course. What was I'll ask you, your favorite experience, if you had to look back in your memory bank, in showbiz?
My pinnacle was Pink Floyd, being able to work with them on tour. But again, one of my highlights is when Bill Graham would introduce himself to me, because everyone knew me and I knew everyone. But yeah, I didn't work for people, I worked with them. And that was my standard, as crazy as it is.
Okay. You mentioned being on the road. Would you clear up some misconceptions for my audience about what the road is like? And I'm putting the quotation marks up. You can't see it. It's podcast. But the road, you hear all these stories, good, bad, and indifferent. What was the road like for you?
Well, half of them are true and half of them are not. The road for me was being a road and stage manager, was making sure everything was set up all the way down to the set lists and waters, directing crew to, set up, and getting the next bus and or truck off to the next city. Ahead of the band. So, we just leapfrog each other quite a bit, and not knowing where I was, what city or what state, many a time, no sleep. And of course, back in the 70s and 80s, we had a technique to keep us awake.
Was it a powdery substance?
Well, yeah, it was, and
boy, I'll tell you, I've heard of that.
Yeah, I bet. And amazingly, the bass player in my old band and the one that worked with Marty Ballin got me in touch with Northern California's suppliers, so I would be doing that over the border quite a bit, and everyone loved me.
Right.
Robin would have been one of my best friends back then. And, it was the way we survived throughout it all. Although I wouldn't drink and I wouldn't smoke and I wouldn't do anything like that, I was always business 200% during the gig, and with these incredible musicians that trusted me with their equipment and lives.
Right. Tell me a bad experience looking back in your memory. First thing you said was Pink Floyd on the upside.
Yeah.
Give me a downside of the biz for you.
Okay. A downside of the biz with me would have been, oh, Lord, it would have been the late 80s, and I had a bus full of equipment, and I didn't have anyone on the bus with me. at that moment, returning from a gig that we had just completed, and the dashboard caught on fire underneath me. So I reached under and started looking and pulling wires with my bare hands. Of course, we both know that that will take the skin right off. But I did stop the fire from ongoing and save the equipment. And that's what I promised them I'd do. And damn it, I did it. That was amazing.
Glory. Were you seriously injured?
No, it just I've been injured other ways, but it took it on down close to the bone, and I healed.
Wow.
Yeah, but you do as you say and get it done. No excuses.
Absolutely. That's how life is. It's kind of an analogy right there. It goes one to another. Our little things that we do individually all adds up to the way the system is run.
Of course.
What went wrong with the system? You started to talk a little bit about politics, and you said you could talk all day. So rather than ask you that, I'll ask you the same question as I ask many of my guests recently. We have an end game coming up to the Trump administration, one way or the other. How do you think it's going to go down?
I'm depressed on who he has stacked against us. If you're going to go with McConnell, if you're going to go with Barr, if you're going to go with Sessions, if you're going to go with Paul Rand, Russia, everything like that. We understand our voting has been rigged and easily hacked still. I think what we're doing is great on the impeachment. I think it's really a little bit late. I cannot think of one good thing that Donnie Boy has done except bring more awareness to climate change because of the hoax. And there's a lot more fact checkers out there in the world than there ever has been before. But he has brought nothing but grief and turmoil and a tarnished stain that will not go away for decades of the U.S., which I used to be proud of. Right now, up in Northern California, Mendocino, I'm selling my house, my property. My boy and I are getting on over to the Philippines, and I'm going to start enjoying life.
Are you pensioned? Are you able to do that, or?
No, I'm just, I'm going to walk away with about $350,000. I've got a company over there. I went over to the Philippines as a lyricist to write songs. I ended up writing 23-part series and giving it to the newspapers and magazines because my heart got infected. I am proud and adore the Filipinos. And that's kind of the way San Francisco used to be back then. Hospitality, respect, caring, people looking at each other in the eye, Yep. I love it. I love it over there. I really miss San Francisco. Every generation will blame the one prior, but it's a ghost of what I had ever remembered.
Yeah, well, sadly, my generation has encompassed what's going on today. And I must take, like all the baby boomers out there, we must take some responsibility for what's going down. And we must recognize climate change. And because the emergency is, we only have time. It's like a running clock. we've only got, like, what do they say, 10, 12 years to reverse it. And
we don't have that long. We never had that long. The clock has already ran out, and everyone is standing around talking about this as they see it right before their eyes, but no one's actually really, Italy, I just posted on my social media, is making sure that all their graduates have a degree in climate change. Okay. Yeah, that's one part of the world.
What a terrific idea.
Yeah, and I mean, it's right in front of us, slamming at us, and we've got a president that calls it a Chinese hoax, and a lot of the other things he labels the immaturity of it all.
Hey, we had a president that relied on his wife's astrologist to run the country.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
This really isn't new.
No.
That was Reagan, for those of you out there who are lucky enough or unlucky enough to be young. And when I say unlucky enough, you're going to have to go through it. If you don't know who he was, you're going to have a long road ahead of you in a world that I would not have chosen to bring a child into.
Yeah.
My kid is 30, born on Earth Day, as a matter of fact, and 420, 420 is a good day to be born on.
Wow. Yeah.
1990. I can't tell you how fast that time is going. And if any of you are out there and you don't think that time goes faster the older that you get, you're wrong.
Ooh. Yeah, you are.
It really does. I mean, these past 30 years have crept by, where the first 30 years or so of my life, 40 years as it turns out, really went slowly. And all of a sudden it got into gear, and it's going downhill or uphill, depending on how you look at it.
Right.
It's been a trip. Hey, Patrick.
You and I were invincible back then. We didn't think about all this that is hammering with our news feeds and social media and everything. It's we just enjoyed life, and we went out there and we did it. I myself have a 13-year-old boy. I married late. And he is taller than I am. He's going to be 6'4", and I tell him the reason I've been good to him is so he doesn't beat me up. No, it's an image reflection of myself looking in the mirror. I'm proud of him. He's my best friend. He's coming with me. And, it goes by real quick. And so what I'm doing in my mortal life is making sure I set up everything for him to continue and to always keep integrity and morals and keep the love and have the empathy for others.
What's his name and what's his passion?
My son's name is John Michael Duffey, and this guy is a rock star, all within his own right. His passion is helping people, and through my company in the Philippines, he's going to be spearheading projects for the poor, the hungry, the people that need medicine. He's got a heart like I do. And with that, wow.
Yeah, with that, wow. I want to tell you what a pleasure it is getting to know you, and
thank you.
Hope that you will return to these airwaves regularly and give us an update about how things are going, because, as you say, there are very few people with a heart in the right place. You've got yours in the right place, But
You too. You too, and I appreciate what you do out here. I love talking with you and listening to you. And you know what? You get a toll-free number, I'll send you a hey from the Philippines in a few months.
Beautiful. Sounds terrific. I will post this interview this week. I will send you a link to it. And
I'd be honored.
I will thank you so much. And
hey.
Thank you for listening, everybody. If you really enjoy my offerings or the offerings on the network, would you please do me a solid? Box up some new or lightly used children's books and take them down to the Head Start program in whatever community you live. Kids need to read. They need to develop passion. They need to be school ready. They need to get their noses out of the devices and the computers and just let their imaginations take over and do that for me, because the kids at the Head Start program need these books more than your average kid needs them, and that goes without saying. So that would help make me feel good. And again, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, I'm Ralph Tyko. The guest is Patrick Duffey. Thank you, Patrick. What a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, my brother. And on that note, with Head Start, getting the children out, get them out in life, get them out in the wilderness. Have maybe some people can empty out their possessions and help the ones less fortunate. Everyone deserves respect. And I thank you for your heart, Ralph. You're a great man. My honor.
Let's not overstate it.
Okay.
Let's not build me up to anything but just a normal human being.
You betcha. You're doing great. Thank you, Ralph. Good day to you.
Adios.
Bye-bye, bud.
Bye-bye. The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.